All right, man, peace. So, brothers, a while ago I received a message from a cat asking me if I was going to continue the series that I recently started called Black Men, Do You Need Mental Help? Volume 1 was featured Mr. Ron Artest, aka Meta World Peace. He was asking me if I was going to continue that series by making Kyrie Irving the subject of the next edition. And I realized that the reason why he was asking that question is because of the recent news that has been brought to light that the Brooklyn Nets are starting to wonder about Kyrie Irving's mood swings. I personally do not believe that Kyrie Irving has a mental issue. I just believe that he is an introvert. And that is why he's going to be the subject of the next edition of the Are You an Introvert series. Volume 1 was featured Mr. Derrick Rose. It's very obvious to me that Kyrie Irving, like many other introverts, is what is considered quote-unquote eccentric or quirky. Someone who likes to stay to themselves. We have to understand that we live in a society of sheep and followers. So people spend the vast majority of their lifetime trying to figure out how they can force themselves into some type of clique so that they can develop an identity for themselves, because they don't know why they're here on the earth. And if you don't know why you're here on the earth, you're not going to know your purpose. If you don't know your purpose, that means that subconsciously you're going to ask other people to tell you what your relevance is on the earth or what your purpose is on the earth. Introverted people are very different. They tend to be what the outside world perceives to be withdrawn, but in all actuality, they're just trying to figure out how they're going to manifest whatever the energy is that is within them. They take time out to themselves. People might say they isolate themselves, but isolationism is the key to actualizing your potential. All great men are isolationists. They take time out to themselves. And it's very difficult sometimes to have a conversation with them unless you're someone who's gifted in the same way that they are gifted. So the most important thing for any quote-unquote introverted person is to be self-driven and to have a lot of self-confidence, because people are going to try to demonize you once they see that you're not like them, and once they see that you're self-validated, you're not concerned with fitting in with others. That bothers a lot of people, because once again, do not let them fool you. Most people out here are sheep, they're lemmings, and they're inwardly embarrassed by it. Am I saying that Kyrie Irving is the perfect person? Absolutely not. Unfortunately for him, even though he's an introvert, he also has to understand that he's the most prominent member of his team currently, and that means that he is going to have to open himself up to his teammates so that he can be considered accessible. Why is that? Because he must play the role of leader. He's a leader on that squad. He tried to be a leader for the Boston Celtics last year, but his quirkiness turned off and threw off a lot of the younger members of his team who did not know how to deal with it because they were not familiar with a lot of his mood swings. Most of these people are not what you see on television. So Kyrie Irving's biggest issue is that he has to come to terms with the fact that he prefers and likes to be by himself, seemingly anyway, but he does participate in a team sport. So anyway, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
Jackie McMullen profiled the evolving culture in Brooklyn with KD and Kyrie now there, including there's a story in there about...
Kevin Durant is something else, boy. He's like the basketball version of Drake. Everywhere he goes, he either has to dress according to the environment that he's in or get a tattoo according to the environment that he's in. When he went out to Golden State, he got a couple of tattoos that indicated that he was coming to the left coast or what have you. I think he got a Tupac tattoo. Now he's playing for the Brooklyn Nets, so he's wearing Wu-Tang sweatpants. Like, come on, brother.
Cutting off communication with team officials during the team's trip to China. It's sort of in a larger section talking about Kyrie's moods, how on all the teams he's played in, there's been times where he doesn't really talk a lot. Nets coach Kenny Atkinson denied that account. But
it never ceases to amaze me how uneasy other people get when they're around someone who does not prefer to engage in small talk. Small talk is for small minds. And not to digress, that's one of the main reasons why men who still have a manly nature have a tough time in relationships with females today, because females are being raised in environments where they're taught that men and women are the exact same. We all know that females have a nature and men have a nature. Females love to gaggle on and small talk and cackle, so on and so forth. Men who have a manly nature prefer to parse their words and to speak only when they need to, or when they're around people who they know are going to understand their vibe. If you ever see some of these females on social media or on the internet, they all say the same thing. I love to laugh. That's code word for any man in my vicinity or in my life, or who I'm quote unquote dating, has to be a minstrel. He has to be an entertainer. He has to be a court jester. Once again, the woman is going to start to get bored because the framework of a relationship has been altered. But just getting back to the point here, they want to effeminize men. They want to make men believe that you have to appease other people with your conversation, even when you're doing your job well. You have to adjust to the people around you. That's what great leaders do. And in this case, I'm not just talking about Kyrie Irving. I'm also talking about the Brooklyn Nets front office. They're going to have to adjust themselves to his personality type to make him feel comfortable, as long as he's making himself open and accessible to his teammates, because they are going to come to him for support and for encouragement, and he has to come out of his shell when he needs to. You can't just be Obi-Wan Kenobi and go off with a huge hood over your head and live in a cave to meditate on life because you feel like it. Now you're in a leadership position. So that's the issue that Kyrie Irving is going to have to come to terms with as a man. But overall, we have to understand that geniuses like to be by themselves.
KD, when asked how he handles Kyrie's moods, he said, quote, "I look at Kyrie as someone who's an artist. You have to leave him alone.
Thank you, sir.
You'll know that he'll bring to the table every night because he cares so much about the game."
And you know what's so interesting about Kevin Durant's statement? Not only does it show great understanding and insight, we have to grasp that, for the most part, great artists or great geniuses in their lifetime were grossly misunderstood. And it was only after they passed away that the sheep and the lemmings all of a sudden started to value them for what they brought to the table, as opposed to what they didn't like about them. Just to take it back to the relationship aspect again, so many people in their lives have been in relationships with good people, but they spent so much of their time, especially during the latter part of the relationship, worrying about what the person didn't do, even though it was minute and minuscule and irrelevant, as opposed to what they brought to the table. And years, if not decades later, they look back and they say, damn, I really should not have made that big a deal about this because that was a great person. That's how geniuses and artists get treated. That's why during their lifetime, for the most part, they're broke. But after they pass away, all of a sudden their paintings and their music sells for millions upon millions of dollars, and people walk around with the image of that person on a t-shirt, because that's the society that we live in. People are taught and told what to think. They're not taught how to truly analyze various situations and to accept people for who they are. As long as they're keeping the laws of the land, the laws of the Most High, who cares about what their personality is?
Now, it might not be how other people want him to care about it. He has his way of doing things. I respect who he is and what he does.
That's why they click.
So I thought this was really interesting. First of all, KD clearly, we've heard them say a few times over the past 6 months, like, he's my best friend, he's my best friend. And it's to the point where some people have been like, why did they keep saying it? That, to me, tells me about their friendship and how close they are, because that is a real quote, not just defending someone off the cuff, but saying, hey, I understand this guy, and this is why I still like him.
And that's also called basic regard for his humanity, Rachel Nichols. What you'll find about most women, many women do not like people who have a personality type that is disparate from their own. They have a very difficult time dealing with that, but women tend to project. So that's why they're always talking about don't judge me and don't judge this. You ever notice how often women use the term judgment, but it's always in reference to themselves, as they rampantly judge everyone else around them? Because the woman, and also males with a female spirit, they make themselves feel better by cutting down people who are around them who have personality types different from themselves. And that's because the vast majority of females, as well as men who have the spirit of women inside of them, appease their own inner insecurities by trying to tear down those who have personality types different from their own. That's what they do, unfortunately. And that stops appropriate growth in various workplace environments where all these groups and demographics are forced together. I tell cats all the time who still work in corporate America, like at my old job, for example, there are many managers and directors and executives, whatever you want to call them, who need to have personality training. They have to be taught how to deal with various personality types, because they do a very poor job of that in the corporate workspace.
What he gives me and the beauty that he gives me in his game and our friendship, I love that. I didn't think the communication in China thing was as big a deal. What struck me, Ramona, was a couple anecdotes there about how Kyrie didn't first want to come to some Santa Monica practice sessions that you had previously talked about, that he didn't want to remove his hat for a team photo. Yeah. He was just like, nope, I'm not doing it.
Well, we know that Kyrie's very paranoid about his hairline and about his hair. That's still not an excuse, but we know that he's paranoid about those things.
do you think the Nets and KD's sort of approach to Kyrie's temperament have to be this season?
I thought Kevin's quote, I had the same reaction to Kevin's quote, which is like, wow, this guy really knows him.
Yeah.
And, you know, he understands his friend. He understands. I mean, I'm sure in their own communication he's gone through that. Like, there's a part of the story that talks about, you know, it took a minute for, like, Kevin and DeAndre were close when...
Once again, introverts are not good with small talk. So if you're someone who's trying to develop any type of quote-unquote intimate relationship, and when I say intimate, I'm not speaking about sexual aspect. I'm just talking about a real connection with someone who's an introvert. You're probably going to have to divulge something personal about yourself, because once again, introverts do not do small talk very well. They might act as if they're doing it early, because many introverts have mastered the art of acting like they're outgoing or acting like an extrovert for the sake of appeasing those around them who they have to interact with. But just to get back to the point, if you're truly trying to develop a real rapport with someone who's an introvert, you're going to have to show your own vulnerability first, because that's just how most introverts roll. They have very long memories, and they tend to remember the times in their past where they've been manipulated, where they thought that they had a friend or they were in a real relationship with someone, and that ended up not being the case. So you're going to have to tread very lightly when you're interacting with them when it comes to demanding things from them on an interpersonal level. Unfortunately, people are not taught these things. Everyone is just taught, hey, let's all act like we're going to be the best of friends and family members from day one, like it's the first day of summer camp or the first day of elementary school. And that's not the case. And as they say, you have to make exceptions for exceptional people. Kyrie Irving is an exceptional person. He's an exceptional talent. Of course, I'm not talking about his hermetic philosophical beliefs. I'll be covering that in another video. But just as a personality type, some people you have to know when and how to leave them alone.
We're living on this cruise ship in Brazil at the Olympics, but it like took a minute for Kyrie to become part of that friend group, because Kevin's explanation was like he just won a title, he was coming down off of something, right? He had a long
so he didn't talk to us very much, and I pushed back on him.
He understands him, right? And I think that it helps that Kevin and DeAndre are his friends, because...
Let me also say this. Many times introverts feel like they've been burned in the past by opening up and being misunderstood. As I've stated, most people who are introverts tend to be on the higher end of the intellectual scale. That means that your perceptual abilities are far higher than the average person who normally spends their life just diddy-bopping their way through everything, accepting information as it's given to them, and also accepting mis- and disinformation as it's given to them, because they don't want to take the time to scrutinize information. It's too tedious for them. It's too laborious for them. So they just accept everything. Introverts tend to sit back and contemplate things, meditate on things before they come to a distinction or a determination or what have you. So just off the bat, the communication is going to be strained because the thought process is different. It's disparate. Extroverts are going to become exasperated when they're trying to communicate with introverts, because they're going to be like, why does everything have to be so deep? Why does everything have to be such a big deal? Because extroverts normally do not want to strain to come to conclusions. They want everything to come easy for them. DeAndre Jordan and Kevin Durant, who knows? They probably wanted to talk to Kyrie about some bitches or some bras they saw with fat asses or something like that. And Kyrie's in the room reading about Hermes and Thoth and Ra and all that other shit he's reading about. And he's like, guys, we'll talk later. Bye. Kyrie has a book about the Babylonian Kemetic mystery school system in his right hand. And in his left hand, he has two basketballs dribbling in between his legs, working on his handle. Like, guys, we'll talk later. Get out.
They're not going to be looking at him sideways going, what's wrong with this guy?
Right.
Whereas in Boston, I think a lot of people did when he would go into one of those places. Yeah, and it's interesting.
Well, Kyrie in Boston, he made a series of faux pas. He tried to manipulate a lot of the younger guys. Really, he was attempting to insult their intelligence as opposed to being honest with himself. That being that he had to come to terms with the fact that he had to alter his behavior in order to be a real leader. You can't be a complete introvert and be a leader, because you have to open up the lines of communication at all times. You're also going to have to defer, because introverts tend to be by themselves. They only worry about themselves. When you're a point guard or a quarterback, you have to defer. You gain power by empowering others. And I think that Kyrie Irving, or at least hopefully Kyrie Irving, learned that during his experience in Boston.
Because I'm just thinking to myself, so I met Kyrie for the first time in the McDonald's All-American game. I'm going into my senior year. And we spent a week together in Columbus, Ohio. And so, yeah, see, bus in the house. So it was just a bonding experience with a whole bunch of young high school people. And Kyrie has always been an enigma. You know, he sort of just danced to the beat of his own drum. And
I don't think that the young lady right here is trying to insult Kyrie Irving when she says that he's always been an enigma. But females get very frustrated when they approach young males and the young male is not willing to have discussions or conversations with them on that flighty level, you know, where everybody's giggling and it's the empty flirtation and so on and so forth. It frustrates them a lot. So automatically they try to categorize a person like that as being difficult or what have you.
I heard KD say these things. I wasn't surprised because KD has always been the type of guy to let people live. He let Russ live in OKC. When he joined the Warriors, he let Steph and Clay live. And now he sort of operates his best game when he does have another superstar that he understands and builds a friendship with. So for Kyrie, everyone that...
Well, presumably speaking, they're going to do very well together. But there's a big difference between living together and dating. You learn more about a person living with them for 1 week than you do dating them for 2 years, 3 years. Always keep that in mind. So they were best friends before they played together. As of right now, KD has been sidelined, so they still can maintain their quote-unquote friendship. Hopefully it lasts, but they are going to have to learn how to work together on the basketball floor.
Kyrie, since he was 15, 16, knows he's just a little bit different. But that's how artists are, and that's how savants are, honestly. And he's a savant with the ball.
Good for you, Chinya Gumake, for understanding that. There are very few females who are able to grasp that about a man, especially that you have to treat different men differently if you hope to maintain a relationship with them. You can't treat somebody who's special like how you did a basic nigga or the last 5 basic niggas that you've been with. It's not going to work that way. Whenever someone is special, you have to treat them in a special way. Once again, you make exceptions for exceptional people.
And look, I think part of the issue is the people around him taking it personally. And before people in the NBA knew him so well, I think they did take it personally, right? We heard stories about his teammates in Cleveland. During an NBA Finals, he's really withdrawn from the team, and the reaction from the guys are, what's going on? Why aren't you talking to me? Why aren't you talking to me? What is going on? Is the bond between us not working? It happened a bit in the Celtics situation where younger guys being like, well, why is he being mean to me? He's not being the leader. And that's not selfishness. It's just that when you're in a situation and someone is being not the way you expect, you want to know, what am I doing wrong? What's happening here? And I think by this stop, people are aware it's not the teammates, it's not the other people, it's not the coaching staff, it's Kyrie. And if you know that it's him, that it's not an issue of static between you, then there isn't this worry and energy and angst and sort of the things that tear apart team chemistry. So I think there is a let Kyrie live attitude going on in Brooklyn.
There has to be, because, I mean, let's be honest, he's one of the top 10 players in the NBA, arguably one of the top 10 players in the NBA. He's box office, as Stephen A. Smith would say, and you need him. And the first 2 or 3 games that I've seen from Kyrie this year, that cat has his bounce back. He has a very strong foundation. His base seems very strong in all of his dribble moves and his drive to the basket. You can see that he's back. He's also explained that one of the main reasons why there were some issues in the Boston Celtics locker room emanating from him is because he had a very difficult time from the issues that were happening in his personal life with the death of his grandfather. So those were his statements for last season. Hopefully they're true. And also hopefully he's learned from those bad experiences and can become a better leader and a better person for his team, while also just staying true to yourself. You have to be who you are. If you're an introvert, don't try to be an extrovert, because you're just going to look awkward. That's like an extrovert trying to act deep. You ever see somebody who's just a clown and they're trying to act as if they have a high level understanding about things? It just comes off forced. In the same way, if you're an introvert, don't try to act like you're outgoing and you're going to have all of these great small talk associations with everyone around you. Just be who you are.
It's great. I am curious if some of the very smaller specifics of he texted back to a training session, I'm not doing that. Or he, I won't take off his hat for a picture where he said, no, I'm not doing that. You can Photoshop it out if you want to. If things like that are going to clash with Kenny Atkinson, who admits in the story he's more of a college-style coach, who sort of runs that sort of live it or love it or leave it program. I don't know if that's ever going to come to a head and we see one of these like one-game team suspensions or something this year or not. But I think the general moodiness thing, I think everyone's over it. It's fine. It's Kyrie. Go let him live.
Like, that's okay. It's just that you live in a team ecosystem. And so when you are one of the leaders on the team and you act like that, it's fine if Kevin Durant gets it, if DeAndre Jordan gets it, even if your other teammates get it, but it also doesn't necessarily make the younger players want to follow the same system that Kenny Atkinson has built that franchise around.
Right.
And so...
Well, the younger players are going to have to build the sweat equity that Kyrie Irving has built up, and that's the bottom line to that. Kyrie Irving is a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's already won a championship. Those are just the facts. So if you're some young guy at the end of the bench and you're dumb enough to think that you can buck up against a coach because Kyrie Irving did, good luck.
I like the part of the story where she describes, you know, they get there 2 hours before practice every day. You get a massage, you go to the weight room, you do some on-court work, etc. Like, that's all fine when you have young journeymen who don't have their own established routines. But when you have superstars who have their own trainers, who have their own systems, their own way of doing things that have made them successful in the league, now you're imposing that on them. There's an adjustment period that I think will be interesting to watch all year long.
Yeah, and we shouldn't be watching for like Kevin Durant because Kevin Durant is a 2 times Finals MVP, a champion. Like, we don't worry about him. I think what we should be watching is the Karis LeVerts and the Spencer Dinwiddie's playing with Kyrie and seeing how he empowers them. Right.
Absolutely. Look, man, I have to admit, this person here, Chinny Agumake, and you brothers know I'm not big on the women talking sports, but she does a very good job. She provides great insight, not only on her own perceptions, but the understanding that she provides on the interactions between players and coaches.
Now, though, Kyrie as a net is a fantastically fun experiment. These games have been so good, and he's been so fun. I just want to see this happen. I don't care that much who he is or isn't talking to off the court at them.
Yes, you do. You're phony. You're another phony brought on TV. You're mad at Kyrie, but Kevin Durant explains certain things to you. And you know what's so funny? Some of these modern liberal females, they act as if they're, you know, they can read people's minds and they can tell people what their emotional state is. It's very clear they had no read on Kyrie whatsoever. And the fact that a man, Kevin Durant, provided that level of insight to who Kyrie was, and also that level of empathy, which is a concept that's normally associated, or an attribute or characteristic that's normally associated with women, shows you how men, when they're in their right mind and they're settled, can read aspects of what's going on around them just as well, if not better than women. And they should be able to, because men, when they're in their right mind, are supposed to be three-dimensional thinkers. The woman leads with her emotions. So sometimes she can read the emotions of other people because that's her wavelength. But for the most part, because the woman is so narcissistic, whenever she's in the company of a person, especially a man, who has a personality type that's not built to appease her or cater to her, she's going to get offended off top. But anyway, Kyrie Irving, there's no doubt in my mind that he is an introvert. Unfortunately for him, he's been blessed in a sport that's a team sport. So he's going to have to acclimate himself to his new environment. He's 27 years old. It's time for him to be the leader that he claims he wants to be. So peace.